This is a one-speaker meeting, and please welcome our speaker tonight, Laurie.
Thank you. I'm Laurie. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Laurie.
Okay, can I break your anonymity right away? That was my little brother that introduced me. The reason why I say he's my little brother, I used to beat the shit out of him when he was a kid until he got as tall as I was, and then that stopped. Thank you, Dave. It's so nice to be invited back here. It's been a long time since I've stood at this podium, so thank you very much. And Charles, I'd like you to speak. I really would like to hear what you have to say. I hope I live long enough to have 52 years. That's amazing. Happy birthday. Congratulations to the chip takers and the other birthday people. And welcome to the newcomers. We're really glad you're here, even if you're not. I was not happy to be here when I first got here. And I really, he's part of my story. He really messed me up tonight. Two things. One, my blood sugar is really high, so I hope it comes down as I talk, because I get a little fuzzy. I'm diabetic, and that was a challenge to try and manage drinking, drugs, and diabetes while I was out there. And since I got sober, I'm a lot healthier because I manage my disease. It's the same way. Diabetes is just like alcoholism. Left untreated, it'll kill me. And it'll kill me a lot quicker, I think, than alcoholism will. But I didn't take care of it when I was out there. My little brother, I got introduced to AA because he was here first, and I came to a couple of meetings. One, to hear him speak. The second time, to give him a cake. And the third time, I came looking for him to come visit him at an AA meeting, and and I just showed up there and said, "Hey, I came to see you." And he's like, "You could have called me. You didn't have to come find me here." And it was this regular meeting that he used to go to on Monday nights, and I remember it. It was after 3 days and 3 nights, the shades drawn, me alone with the drugs, bottle of Stoli, and I didn't answer the phone for a few days, and it was just me alone, and I remembered there was this meeting on Monday night, and my brother was there, and I went to find him, and showed up. Remember that? Never. This is the first time for us being in the same room with me sharing. Yeah, totally messed me up, Mike. Thanks. Thanks for showing up. I saw him. I'm like, you could leave, and I'll give you the CD. That would be, and you can listen to it. Not with me in the room, but I love him, and he really helped me that night. The best thing, because we went out to the parking lot that night, and he said, "What are you doing here? Really, what's going on?" And I started to cry, and I told him about my 3 days and 3 nights and what my weekend was like, and he said, "Wow, it sounds like maybe you got a problem. It sounds like maybe you're an alcoholic." And I said, "Oh no, I'm nothing like you. I just got a little problem." And he's. Yeah, and he said, "Try going 30 days, without using anything." And I went, "That's a good idea. I think I'll try that." And I think that I think I can. And I lasted 3 days, and after that experiment, after 3 whole days, I went, "See, I can manage this. I can control it." And I went 3 days, and then immediately called the dealer. And that was last 6 weeks before I got into this program. I did a couple of hospital trips. One was a minor stroke. That was the first trip to the hospital. That was at Brotman Hospital. The second one was Cedars. I don't know why I chose to go to 3 different emergency rooms, but the second one, my car just drove to Cedars, and the third one was Century City Hospital, and that was turned out to be my first day of sobriety. But let me back up a little, because I have some time here, don't I? All right. Yeah, I know. Oh, he's wincing. I'll give you the 5-minute version of where we came from, or where I came from. two crazy Italians in New York, and I came from a crazy, dysfunctional household. That's all there is to it. There was a lot of yelling and screaming and fighting, and oh, Amy wanted me to move this. Violence, and I saw things no kids should ever see. I'm the oldest of the five, and my brother didn't see a lot of it, but my father being taken away in handcuffs and my mother being taken away in an ambulance, and I saw that more than once, and I saw him beat the shit out of her right in front of me, and I was terrified when I was living in that house. So by the time I had my first drink, smoked my first joint, my first hit of acid, my first Quaalude, my first line of cocaine, I really needed it, and I had needed it for some time, at about 12, and yeah, and and that's the next 20 years was spent getting and doing it, trying to find ways and means to get and do more of everything, of all of it, and a lot of things happened during that time, which none of it's really important. But 20 years later is when I came here. My brother had already gotten sober. During that time, he was selling pot to everybody in the neighborhood at 9. He was a drug dealer in the neighborhood at 9 years old. And oh, I'm sorry. Uh-oh. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. No more. You did tell me let it rip before I started. Okay. So, and he was supplying the drugs to everyone in the neighborhood and all my friends, and that's why he's such an entrepreneur today. He got his skills very young in life. And so that's the next 20 years. But when I started using, it was the early 70s, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was a great time to be young, and it was way before safe sex, and way before just say no to drugs, and great rock and roll, great music came out of that era, and that was the three things that gave me ease and comfort was alcohol, drugs, and music. So it was a great time. It was before just say no, it was just say thank you. Thanks for sharing, and everybody was sharing, and sharing. I mean, all kinds of drugs, right? Right, Sam? Sam was there. Acid and LSD and secanols and tuanols and all kinds of speed and all kinds of hash and pot, and everything had different names to it, and everybody was sharing, and it was a great time, and before they found out that cocaine was non-addicting cocaine, and it was safe to use cocaine, and in the 80s everything changed, and I got here in the early 90s. That's when I started. My brother had gotten sober, and he was smoking crack. And so I knew this thing worked because my brother was smoking crack, and he'd stopped smoking crack coming to meetings. And so the three hospital visits on that last one was in October of '94. And that last trip to the emergency room, I had a doctor look at me. Two people I was partying with had brought me in there, and the doctor took a look at me because they were wondering why this young woman was having seizures, and doctor took one look at me and pulled the curtain and said, "Everybody out of here," and he looked at me and said, "You're a drug addict," and gave me that look. The look of disgust, like that you woke me up for this. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and they had called him in there, and he let me go, let me leave, and said I really shouldn't because you're having seizures. I should report you to DMV. They'll take your license away, and you won't be able to get insurance and all of that because you're having seizures. And gave me his card and said I'm going to let you go, and I hope I don't have to see you in here again like this. And when I turned a year sober, I had to hold on to that guy's card. When I turned a year sober, I sent him a 1-year chip and a letter, and I thanked him because for the first time I saw myself the way someone else saw me, and I got a little look at what I had become, and and how I looked to other people through this guy's eyes, and it was eye-opening, and that was when I started going to meetings. 6 weeks earlier, I had seen my brother at that one meeting, and I tried that little experiment, because he got it straight out of the book. Try some controlled drinking and see how it works. And yeah, and he said, and I remember him saying that to me, my hat's off to you if you can do it, 30 days. And I started going to meetings. 60 days, meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. I went all over the place looking for something. I was not happy to be here. I was not a happy newcomer. I didn't walk in here saying, I'm home. In fact, during that 60 days, I got restless, irritable, discontent, more uncomfortable in my own skin, and just couldn't find a solution. I just couldn't see how this program was going to help me, how anything in that book was going to help me, and how any of you were going to help me. And I just hated being here. I thought you were all crazy. I wound up really falling in love with alcoholics and falling in love with Alcoholics Anonymous once I got into the solution and found out how powerful this program is and how it works. But it took hitting the real bottom in sobriety for that to happen. 60 days, no solution, no steps, no God. And I was white-knuckling it. It's called untreated alcoholism, sober, and people suffer from it all the time. I see people suffering, in these rooms without this program, without a power greater than me. I'm untreated. I didn't know it. I hadn't opened the book. Nobody had told me anything about the program. I was just white-knuckling it, coming to meetings, because you guys were all doing that and showing up. And the first speaker, I guess I'll talk about Dallas for a minute. The first speaker I heard that gave me any hope was Dallas Taylor, and a lot of you know him. I was 60 days sober when I heard him speak at the Saturday night meeting, and he talked about being a recovering rock star, and that got my attention. I leaned a little closer. Who is he? And he talked about starting a band called Crosby, Stills, and Nash and having a resentment because the band should have been called Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Taylor. And I related to that and went, wow, I think like that, and I feel like that. And after that meeting, and there was, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, that's like one of the many, many musicians that, that I knew from the 70s that got me through my childhood, and it was such a gift to be able to meet him, and David Crosby was there that night in the room, and he was sober. I'm breaking everybody's anonymity. And many other, I'm not going to go through the list and break everybody's anonymity of all the legendary musicians that I've met in these rooms that didn't die and made it here, and they were all here when I got here, and that gave me a little bit of hope, especially meeting Dallas and hearing him talk and hearing his story that night. I don't think I've ever heard him talk like that since then, and I've heard him many, many times, and it's always such a gift to see him and tell him how much he touched me that night, because he gave me the strength to come back for one more day, and that was on a Saturday night. On Sundays, and then the next day I met my sponsor, and I didn't know she was going to turn out to be my sponsor, but after all that time, 2 whole months of white-knuckling it, I was done here, because I just was on my way out the door. My plan was to call the dealer and go buy some cocaine and get in the car and go to Vegas and sit down and drink as much as I could drink and gamble and just, because I knew that it worked, drugs and alcohol worked from the very start, gave me ease and comfort, gave me courage, made me comfortable, made living in that house okay for me, got me through. So that was my plan. And I ran into this little woman. She's 4'11". But when she opens her mouth, it's like King Kong walked into the room. She's an incredibly powerful woman. And she stopped me and said, "How you doing?" And I gave I didn't give the newcomer answer, which is fine. I told the truth for the first time because I thought she really wanted to know. So I said, to tell you the truth, I'm pretty fucked up. I feel like shit. I hate this program. I hate all of you, and this isn't working, and I'm leaving. And I told her what my plan was. And she said, well, you could do that. That sounds like a plan, but you know, we do have a program. It does work. I could show you how to do this, and you don't have to do it that way. And Sean, he called me up an hour ago and said, are you nervous? And I said, thanks, Sean. You wanted me to mention it. So I met this little lady, and she said, give the program give me 24 hours, come to my house tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, bring your book, and I'll show you. And she lives right down the block here, and I drove past the Vons because something happened to me there that night on my way to her house. I drove to her house, and when I got there, she was not there. The next night, 8 o'clock, I had the big book with me, and I'm waiting to run into her, and the lights were off, no car was there, and she was not there. And so, you know, I knocked on the door, and I went, oh, great. This is before the days of cell phones, so I couldn't call, and I drove down to the Vons, right down the block here, and there was this phone booth on the wall, and I stopped and called my answering machine. I thought maybe she called me, and something happened. There were 3 messages on that. One was from somebody. Second message was from my dealer. Hey, it's been 2 months. How you doing? I haven't talked to you in a while. What's going on? And there was a message from her, and she said, you know, I'm going to be late. Keep yourself busy. I'm sorry. I've got tied up at work, and I'll be there at 8:30. So I had some time to kill, and I called the dealer back because I had a little time, and and I didn't want to be rude, so I returned the phone call. And I stood there and talking to him, and you know, went right into like nothing had changed from the 2 months. You know, what's going on? Where are you going to be later? I'm meeting this person, but I'll be free around 11. You know, meet me at my house, and I had the whole thing set up. And talking to him, anybody listening, it was clear it was an addict talking to their dealer, and from the conversation, and there was a little line that had formed, and there were people waiting to use that phone, and there was a guy standing behind me that was listening to my end of the conversation. And as I was talking to him, I was laughing with him and crying and laughing and holding back the tears and laughing and crying because I knew that I had, surrendered. I couldn't fight with this thing anymore. You know, I'm not strong enough to fight alcoholism. It's bigger and stronger and more powerful than I am. And I had surrendered. And I hung up the phone and burst into tears and started running toward my car. And this guy followed me. Now, when I did glance over while I was talking on the phone, I did notice he was hip-slick cool, tall, dark, and handsome, totally my type, and he, you know, and he got my attention for a minute. But I went running toward the car, and he stopped me, and tapped me on the shoulder, and said, "What are you crying for?" And I said, "Oh, you don't want to know. It's a long story." And he said, "Sure, I do. Give me the short version. What's wrong?" And I said, "Do you know anything about drugs and alcohol?" And he said, "As a matter of fact, I do. I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've been sober for 8.5 years." And I stood there, yeah, I said the same thing. Wow, really? Oh my God, you know, and in 5 minutes I told him my whole story. I'm 61 days sober, and you know, and he was just wonderful. The most beautiful man that I know still today in Alcoholics Anonymous. That man's name is Flo, and today he is 21 years sober. He happened to be at that grocery store buying diapers for his baby, and he was waiting for the phone to call his wife to find out what kind of diapers to buy. And that little baby's 13, and I'm 12 and a half, and he's 21, and we're all still here. And, you know, it just warms my heart every time I think about that moment. And when I see him, you know, Flo, that's how God works. He uses who's available, you know, and it happened to be Flo that night. I got to my sponsor's house finally, skipping through the door, all smiling from ear to ear. And now I was suicidal that morning when she talked to me on the phone and ready to kill myself. And when I got there and I told her, I said, "You'll never guess what just happened to me." And she said, "Was it a God shot?" And I went, "I don't know, nothing about no God shot, but here's the story and here's what happened to me." And she said at about 7:45, when I knew I was going to be late, I stopped and prayed, and I asked God to take care of you until I could get there. And I knew that he'd do something, I just didn't know what. So, this is like, then she also added, and God knows you, and he knows you real well. He sent a good-looking guy to get your attention. And he was married, so he was safe. Because Flo kissed me on the cheek and sent me on my way and told me I was going to be okay, and in that 5 minutes said everything that I needed to send me on my way. And from that moment on, that was I got the precious gift that we all need to have here. That's one thing that I cannot give to anybody, and that is willingness to work this program. And I got the willingness to seek a power greater than me from that moment on, because I wanted what she had. I wanted that kind of God in my life, and that's what I asked her. How do I get that? I want that kind of power in my life. And she sat down with me, and we started to go through the book that night. I went back to her house the next night, and the next night. It was on a Monday. But that night, she said, I said, how do I start? I want that. How do I start? She told me to put God in the car with me, put him in the passenger seat, take him home with you. When you get home, pull up a chair, put God in the chair, and talk to him. When you wake up tomorrow morning, put God back in that chair and talk to him. When you go to work, take him with you. And that's exactly what I did. Come on, God, we're going home. And let me talk. I used to talk because I had him right here. I had this God right next to me, and I talked to him like he didn't know anything that was going on in my life, And that's how this relationship with this power greater than me started. Very small. Very small, and it's developed into something big. But when I would wake up in the morning, I still have an empty chair in my bedroom, and it's a director's chair because God is the director. So it's very symbolic. And I remember put God in the chair. Every once in a while, there's a pair of jeans on God's chair, but nobody sits. Nobody sits in God's chair. I don't sit in it. That's God's chair, and that's the way it's been. And that's how it started, with finding a power greater than me. Willingness is the only thing that we can't give anybody around here, because without the willingness, I couldn't go through the rest of the work. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday, I made that third step decision. And, the big book talks about, it answers the question, just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? And the big book answers it specifically. What was the decision? The decision is I'm going to quit playing God in my life and in the lives of the people around me, and that God's going to be my director, and I'm going to be the actor and just play my part. And I'm not going to try and run the whole show anymore. And there's a lot of examples in there, in the actor trying to run the whole show, and the first requirement is that we have to be convinced. I have to be, let me put it to me. I've got to be convinced that my life run on my will can't be a success. Right, Sam? Any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. It's what the book says, but my life run on my will can't be a success. And if I'm convinced of that, then I can make this decision that I'm not going to run it anymore. Then I'm going to turn it over to a power greater than me. And then I started on a fourth step. And my first fourth step, I've done many since then, but that first one was big and very significant because I found out a lot of things. That three-column living. The book says that's as far as most of us ever got. This is the list of everybody that I'm pissed off at. This is what they did and why I'm pissed, and this is how it's affected me. And that's how most of us ever got, as far as most of us ever got. So when I got here, my list, I had 186 people that I was pissed off at, and I could tell you everything that they did and how it was affecting me. I never got to the fourth column, because that's as far as I got with my list of what everybody had done to me. And in the first inventory, I took a look at that fourth column, where it says that we got to put out of our minds the wrongs that everyone else had done and look for our own mistakes. Where was I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid? What did I do to cause or contribute to this situation? And the most significant thing I found on that first inventory was that household that I grew up in. I had a little resentment about 25 years toward my mom. And when I got here, I hadn't talked to her in about 10 years. And I was very comfortable with that resentment, very comfortable with it. I was willing to go to my grave, without ever talking to her again. That's how dug in I was with that resentment. And for the first time, when I looked at that fourth column, I saw the harm that I had done and what I did to her. And what I did to her was much worse than what she did to me, because I intentionally set out to hurt her during that 10 years. And that was a tough one to swallow. I had to swallow some big chunks of truth about me. And so that's the only one I want to mention. There's 186 of them, so you don't want to hear all the rest on the first one. Now, it's pretty, now I got 4 or 5. They're big, when the 4 or 5, I can't live with resentments anymore. I cannot walk around the planet carrying that stuff with me anymore. And the program gives us a way out. We got a way out of anger and a way to be free of it. So I want to talk about my mom for a minute. After I finished my 5th step, it was my 34th birthday. Remember this, Mike? Because you got one in the mail too. And my 34th birthday, I got a book from my mom. It was a photo album, and it was a birthday gift, and it said this is your life, and all of my baby pictures and cheerleading and gymnastics and ballet and tap dance and all this stuff, and my graduation from kindergarten and everything that in my life. This is your life book. And in looking in that, she was right there through every one of those things. In every picture was me and her. And there was this one picture of the graduation from kindergarten, and I'm looking up at her with a little twinkle in my eyes, and she's looking down at me, and our eyes are locked. And I saw that my perception of what really happened was not the truth about the story that I made up about this childhood that was through this warped perception through alcoholism. Wasn't the truth. And I cried for days reading through that. I showed it to my sponsor, and she cried. And it came to me, how am I going to make an amends for this? How do I even start? And I sat, and the answer came to me one day, and I sat down after looking at that photo album and wrote her a letter, a very long letter, and just what I gave her, what I withheld for the 10 years, acknowledgement. I thanked her for everything she ever did for me, everything that I was because of her, all the things that I had inherited from her, all the things that were good about me that I got from her. And I mailed it, put the stamp on it, mailed the letter, and I was free. And to this day, I can't even tell you what I was pissed off at, because it's gone. It's been removed. When God takes it, he takes it. And I got to start something brand new with my mother. Good sponsor direction. She said, call your mom up. Call her, talk to her. I started sending cards that were a little more meaningful. We started talking to each other. I started sharing with her a little bit about my life. My sponsor gave me, so there were some things on that inventory when I got to that 9-step list that she said, do not make this amends. The best thing you can do for this person is leave them alone and, and stay away. And that's how I learned to really listen to your sponsors, by not listening to her, because I'm like, oh no, I'm on the spiritual quest, and I want to clean out, I want to clear up my side of the street. And I did, I made the one amends she told me not to make, and exactly what she said was going to happen happened. I wound up hurting this person all over again and having to make another amends. And the best thing I should have done and could have done for them was to leave them alone. So I listened to my sponsor when it comes to 12-step advice. She's been wonderful and given me a lot of great advice. So for 12 plus years, I've got this relationship with my mom. And had it not been for this program, I could have missed that. I could have missed it. And, what I want to say to all of you and the newcomers is that, you're going to have your own experience with this, and you don't know what God's got for you. I had no idea. And if they had told me that, that's what I was going to get, I probably wouldn't have done it. You know, and it's not what I came here for. But that's one of the many, many gifts that I've received and continue to receive. Now, I guess I want to talk about my dad for a minute. I don't usually talk too much about him. I can't look at you. Well, you know, my dad and I was clean with him, and I had made my amends. And, you know, our dad died 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And that was probably the hardest thing I had to go through in sobriety, was losing a parent. You only get one of each, and once they're gone, they're gone. And I had the opportunity, because we knew he was sick, you know, to go back and to see him and to be his little girl again and to sit on his lap and when I went to visit him and knowing he was sick and let him be my dad. He got to give me advice about cars, relationships, and money, the three things he, you know, that he loved to give me advice about. And I got to sit and be his little girl. The innocence of our relationship had returned. And there was a time 15 years ago, I remember him driving me to Kennedy Airport and all the way, because my father was an old crotchety New Yorker that didn't mince words, driving me all the way to Kennedy Airport, telling me how ashamed he was at my behavior during that trip, and what the hell happened to my daughter out in what's going on out in Los Angeles, and how ashamed I felt and how I couldn't look him in the eye that he had to see me like that. And then to go from that to this, to being there before he died, and having one of the last things he said to me was that he was proud to have me as his daughter, is only, you know, a gift to this program. And, you know, when I knew I got the phone call, you better come home, I called my sponsor and said, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And and she gave me some just great direction. You show up and you be of service to your dad, and you be of service to your mom, and you be of service to your stepmom, and you be of service to your family, and you don't dump your pain on those people. You call me and you call other people and you go to meetings. And that's what we did. My brother too. I went to meetings. Strangers in AA walked in to AA meetings in New York and said, my father's dying, I'm in a lot of pain, I don't know what to do, and I let strangers comfort me, you know, in New York. And it's a wonderful, wonderful gift that we have here. Let me see. Well, I want to talk about prayer, 11th step, and prayer, meditation, and working with others. I only have 5 more minutes. I started speaking at 6 or 9 months sober, and I've had the opportunity to sponsor a lot of women. I think that's the most important thing that we can do around here, is carry this message and work with others. And God, when I was first about 9 months sober, people started asking me to you know, for my number and want me to sponsor them. And everyone that asked me for help, I gave them my sponsor's number. Said, here, she's the one I got it from. You should call her. And I had her so loaded up. She had about 7 people, you know, and finally she called me up and said, stop giving my number out to people, and that these people don't want what I have, they want what you've got, you got to start giving it away. And I said, no, I just got this thing. I don't want to give it to anybody. I want to hold on to it for a while. Let me enjoy it. And she laughed. She thought it was funny. And but eventually I started working with people. And I think the first girl that I sponsored her 11 years ago for 1 year and took her through all 12 steps. And today, because this is how long-reaching it works. I called her about 2 months ago and said, I need you to come speak for me on my Monday night meeting. And she said, oh, no, I can't do that on Monday nights. That's the night that I do my workshop at my house, and I take all the girls that I'm sponsoring through the steps. And that's 11 years later. So I don't think that what I say tonight, people are going to be talking about 11 years from now. But the person that I help today may help a lot of people over the next 10 years and still be carrying the message 10, 11 years later. And that is what we do. That's the most important thing. And prayer. Things I pray for today, 2 things. I pray for God to put someone in my path that I can help today, and to put someone in my path to help me. Now, when I pray for, the help never shows up the way you want it to or the way that you expect. Now, I have to tell the truth that I always want the help to show up tall, dark, and handsome and in a Mercedes, right? Preferably with a bankroll, and, it's helpful. And the help usually shows up, some crazy newcomer in a recovery house in the valley with no car, no cell phone, and can only leave the house on Tuesdays when her sponsor picks her up. And I'm on the freeway on a Tuesday night driving in traffic going, God, couldn't you send somebody closer? I know there's someone closer I could help. And I get there and I show up and she starts to talk and I start to talk and she starts sharing and I start sharing and we open up the book and start to read. And I watch her little eyes light up and her little face come to life and she blossoms right before my very eyes. And I know that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be and exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I got the help that I asked for. And that is how it works. And, so I never say no to God. I just never say no to what's put in front of me. Now, sometimes this service work is going to be the death of me. I feel sometimes I just can't do one more thing, but I don't want to miss anything. If I say no, to me, it's like saying no to God, and what is the precious gift He's got for me, and if I say no, I'm going to miss it. So I've learned not to say no. That's why when we say don't say no to an AA request, that's why. Because you don't know what God's got for you. And if you say no, you might miss it. I missed out on a lot of stuff alone in the room with the drugs and not answering the phone, and my life got very small. Now it's very big, and I don't want to miss anything. So I've learned not to say no. And I'm just about out of time, so I just want to say for the newcomers and anybody that's hurting, if you're hurting, let somebody know, because we can't help you if we don't know. Let somebody know that you're hurting. Please tell the truth to someone. Okay, and then yes, I'll stop. I want to quote the big book, the shortest sentence that really says it all, and that is it's on page 88. It says, "It works. It really does." Thank you.